Hello and welcome. I'm Melissa if you're just joining me here. And today's video is actually all about my Calathea Makoyana here. She's beautiful. I want to talk about the journey that this plant has been on with me, and I'll go more into my care and everything with her. This is actually a new series that I started on my channel for this year. This is my second video. The first one I did last month in January, and it's actually Monstera adansonii, and my 2-year journey with that plant from starting it on a moss pole to where it is now. She's actually right back there. She is massive. The newest leaf is like 20 inches long. It's crazy. So yeah, I just really want to talk more about her journey with me. She actually grew back from a pile of dirt. She was down to nothing, and I'll kind of share some photos of her progress and everything. But I love this Calathea, and yeah, I just want to talk about her a little bit more. Going back into the history with this plant, I actually had to go back into an app. I used to use a plant app back in the day when I first started collecting plants, and I don't use it anymore, but I'm gonna put on the screen of all the information I saved on this plant. But I first added her in September of 2020. So this plant is like over 3 years old now, which is crazy. Well, technically she grew back, so she's a little bit younger, but I first got the plant in 2020, and I actually got her at Lowe's at my big box store, and I loved her. She was so beautiful. So over that winter, she was doing well, and she ended up coming down with spider mites, and it was really, I didn't really know what spider mites were back then. I had heard of plant pests, but I was someone who always thought I was lucky that I didn't have plant pests. They ended up taking over this plant, and she looked pretty bad. I ended up cutting all the growth back, and what was left just kind of went dormant, and she was down to a stump. This was around March, so at the beginning of spring, I'm just like, you know what? I'm just gonna restart this plant. I really feel like she can come back. I'm gonna try and save her. I had like a really old greenhouse, like one of those green cheap Amazon greenhouses back in the day. And I stuck her in there, and it was like 6 months at least of just being a pile of dirt before she finally started growing back. I remember seeing some new growth spikes, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this plant's growing again. I cannot believe it. When the soil appeared dry, I would still water it on occasion. In my mind, I wasn't thinking that this plant was even going to come back. I just couldn't throw it away. I don't know. I'm not someone who likes to toss plants, so I'm glad I never did throw it away, because if I did, I would not have this beautiful plant today. The next set of photos that I have of her in my camera roll was the following year. It was early, probably like February, March sometime, so like almost a full year later. Of 2022 is when I had like 5 leaves, and that's when I started taking photos of her pretty regularly. It's just pretty cool to look back to see like where she came from, you know? So once I had a small plant growing, I was just so excited. I literally babied this plant, and I enjoyed just growing this plant from everything that she went through. I just thought it was such a beautiful Calathea. I was watering her with distilled water only. I kept her in that little greenhouse up until we moved here to Savannah. I was actually really nervous. We moved in April of 2022. So this was like, as she was growing back, was like right before we were moving. So I was really worried that she was gonna go downhill after we moved here. I was so anxious. So after I moved here, she just really loved the environment. I was watering her with distilled water only for a period of time. I will get spider mites occasionally, but nothing like I used to. And I actually use predatory mites now, and it's helped me so much in dealing with spider mites in my collection. I find spider mites like Calathea, but they like philodendron more in my experience with them. So I'm constantly checking her. She actually had her first set of spider mites a few months ago. When I was checking her, I noticed them popping up. I got rid of them pretty quickly. I gave her a thorough hose off and put predatory mites on her, and I no longer have like any spider mites. I probably do like weekly checks. I'm like flipping over the leaves, because you can spot them pretty easily if you know what you're looking for. So Yeah, I'm always checking because I want her to be happy and pest free, and I don't want any other issues to come up with her. I really hope she blooms for me again. She bloomed for me last year. She had cute little blooms, but you can just see, I'll put progress photos of her throughout the months, like all of 2022 and then all of last year. She just kept increasing in size. And I feel like as of recently, like currently from today's state, she has lots of new growth coming in. I transitioned from slow release to using a liquid fertilizer, and I really think that helped her in growth over, I would say, yeah, like the last 3 or 4 months. I would say just be careful with that because I did notice some burning on some of the leaves, which I think I overdid it with the fertilizer. I cut a lot of those leaves off that had the burn marks. Trying to see if I left one because I wanted to show you the burn damage, but I might have gotten rid of it. Oh no, I didn't. Okay. I was using GT Foliage Focus for 3 months, and now I'm using Foliage Pro to try out, and I've been using Foliage Pro for, I would say, the last 3-4 weeks. So I consider myself still new with liquid fertilizer. I'm still trying to figure out how much to fertilize my plants and what they need, especially some of my bigger plants, you know. But I would say she was probably a little bit more sensitive to like a higher dose. So I'm trying to gently fertilize her once a week. And sometimes I don't even do it once a week now. I'll just throw in regular water. I do use tap water now to water my plants, but I used distilled water with her for a long time, and then I switched to rainwater for a while, but then I quit using rainwater when I got fungal issues popping up in my collection. So I do filter my water now, and I add a stress coat in there to help remove some of the chlorine. I have started using silica now, but I haven't used silica on her yet, but I am curious to see if silica would make her more resilient and less prone to pests and everything. So I might start using it on her. If anything were to happen to her, I would probably cry. She's like literally my favorite Calathea. I have had my struggles with some Calatheas. I actually had a period of time where I had flat mites in my collection, but they are mostly attracted to my Maranta and some Calatheas. I'll talk more about her care. I have her currently planted in a 8-inch nursery pot here, and I just have her sitting just in a white cash pot. I water her usually once a week with the water that I was talking about, because I feel like this plant room gets pretty warm, especially over summer. Since it's been winter time, it doesn't get as warm in here, but it's still like decent enough that it can get warm, especially with all the grow lights in here. And I have south-facing windows, so it can warm up this room pretty quickly. So I usually just lift her up now. I can tell when she's thirsty just by lifting the pot. Like here, I watered her a few days ago, so she's not thirsty yet, but it feels heavy, so I know it's not time to water. I would say when she's probably even like 3/4 dry, and sometimes I've let her go all the way dry. I try not to though, but I would say at least like halfway to 3/4 dry. Usually I just, like I said, I lift it up. I feel if it feels light, then I'll go ahead and water her. I did have her on my shelf under a Barina light for a really long time until she started getting bigger, and she now outgrew that spot. I have her actually sitting on the floor now, so she still can receive a little bit of that light, but she mostly gets ambient light throughout my plant room, so not a ton of light, I would say, and she seems to tolerate that. When she was sitting under the Barina light, like she would get, I would say she was probably within a few inches of it, and she seemed to do well. I would say if any of the leaves got super close, one would actually burn a little, so I have to be careful. But now that she's on the floor, I don't have to worry about it. Her leaves burning. I just have to be careful with the fertilizer. Her mix is actually in a mix I don't make anymore. It's a DIY mix, and I had used Leca. So I don't like the mix that she's actually in, but she seems happy in it, so I'm not going to repot her or anything until she outgrows it. I would probably go up to a 10-inch from an 8-inch. I imagine she can probably stay in here all of this year. I potted her into here, I think, early last year, so she's been in this pot, I would say, for like maybe 10 months. Actually, almost a year. She's got a little root peeking out like right here, but she's not root bound or anything like that, because I went up to I think a 8-inch from a 5-inch. So I plan on keeping her in here at least for this growing season. I'll see how she is filling out by the end of summer and if I need to upsize her. She gets like pretty good humidity, I would say, just being in my plant room. I would say average is 50 to 60. On more humid days, like if it's raining here in Savannah, humidity in this room can get like 70% easily. You know, obviously Calatheas love that environment. But I think more than anything, just being really consistent in her care, checking for pests, feeding her well, giving her light. I feel like all those things have contributed to where she's at now. It's just crazy to think that she's over 3 years old now. I don't know, it's just crazy to me. So I think the biggest takeaway, if you are struggling with Calathea, I still have Calatheas that I am struggling with. I would say sometimes I feel like they go dormant if they're not happy, or if there's like a pest issue like flat mites, spider mites. Don't give up on them. They can come back. Just give it some time. I feel like you have to have a lot of patience sometimes with these plants. Keep it in an environment that is more ideal for growing these kind of plants. So somewhere where it's more humid, more warm, make sure that you're giving light. Continue to water if the soil is dry. You don't necessarily have to feed if there's no like growth. If it's dormant, you don't have to worry about fertilizing, but I would just make sure that you're still meeting those conditions, and hopefully in some time it'll grow back. I would say err on the side of repotting and messing with the roots. They don't really like their root system messed with. They can shock pretty easily. So if you are repotting, gently remove some of the old dirt. Try not to remove it all. I usually just take it out and then fill up around when I go to upsize her. But you can remove some of that old soil. I would just say be careful with shocking her too much. And if you do have to, then definitely water in some kind of nutrient booster, soil enhancer to help lessen any shock that they may go through. I really hope you enjoyed my story with her and her progress. I love her so much. It did not happen overnight. So keep that in mind. But yeah, if you're struggling with the Calathea, they can grow back. Just give it some time, be patient, keep them in that environment that is more ideal for growing, where it's warm and humid. They are tropical plants, so they do prefer that. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed, and I will talk to you here soon.